Greetings and salutations. This is your final notes it for Rome 1. Final one. It's it. Yes, it's the last one. So make sure paying attention to directions here. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to review vocabulary together. So you will have a vocabulary quiz on Thursday, over all of your vocabulary words. If you had the picture from last week, and I guess I'll do a little review for you again. I suppose I could do that for you for tomorrow as well. And then Friday, we're going to review our notes together. So we're going to look through them, see what kind of questions you have. Probably that next Monday will be a study day. And then when we come back from Thanksgiving break, you'll take your test somewhere somehow. Anyways, I don't know how long we're going to be on this break at home. So as you know, we just got to play it by ear and see if things improve in the next week or so before they make any kind of decision. But anyways, this is your last set of notes for Rome. So enjoy it. I hope so. All right, so this one is called Augustus, another emperor. So where we last left off, we talked about Octavian, Mr. October, and how he had survived the third triumvirate. And that is not him. That's just a picture of an emperor. And there's the Emperor's New Groove, which is cool and funny in case you haven't ever seen it before. But anyways, so Augustus, Octavian changed his name to Augustus, which means the revered or majestic one. Ends up being surviving the triumvirate, becoming the, in essence, imperator or emperor of Rome. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how he does as emperor, if it's good, and then we'll talk about some of the bad emperors of Rome. And it doesn't mean Rome is falling or doing badly. It just means sometimes you have, well, bad leadership. And certainly I've had the case at times in different countries where we've seen different leaders do different things. So anyways, here we go. So here's a picture of our dear Augustus, our dear Octavian. If you take a look at the picture down below, one thing that I hadn't mentioned is how Augustus Octavian was actually a twin. And throughout his life, he actually had this symbiotic twin that was attached to him ever since he was born. And you can see him holding up his toga, his robe there, and he used it to kind of cover up this little baby that was attached to his leg all throughout his. That wasn't true? Oh, okay. No, I'm just kidding. That's not actually true, but it is kind of weird though. I know some of you are like, oh, that's so gross. But it's more of, if you look at it, the baby would be like Rome, and it's holding on to him for like dear life. And as the baby grows, it's holding on to Augustus, and Augustus kind of going to be the good leader for Rome that they need. And that's really what it is. Although the baby symbiotic story is kind of fun. But if you fell for it, you're not the only one. So anyways, so under Augustus and these other emperors, Rome had 200 years of peace. Now, it didn't mean that Augustus served for 200 years. He was not a zombie or a vampire. But it's adding all these guys up together that you had this 200 years of peace, which they called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace of the time period. So what this means is that not everything was great, but everything was pretty good. And so the idea is if you have 200 years of peace, that means you don't have 200 years of fighting. So if you're not fighting, you actually have times to do other things, which would include not fighting, but also making your empire grow quite well. And we'll talk about some of these things today in terms of what they were able to do. In case in point, if I move myself out of the picture, there is a picture of Rome, then empire at the time period on Europe, Asia, and Africa. So basically rimming the whole Mediterranean Sea there. So another reason why they're able to keep that Roman peace is they had a 1,000, oh my goodness, my reading is terrible, 150,000 man professional army made up of all Roman citizens. Now, three things stand out on this. Number one, that's a lot of people. Number two, it was professional, which means that they were well trained and they were paid. And number three, they were all Roman citizens. So it means that they did not have mercenaries fighting on their behalf or slaves. It was people who actually had a buy-in to Rome. So it means that they're probably going to fight better. Now, another thing that Augustus did, besides make this great big army, is he created wisely what's called the Praetorian Guard. Praetorian Guard, very similar to like the praetors. Now, these guys were like his secret service. Now, think about it. Why would it be smart for Augustus to have his own secret service? Moment to thought. Well, if you think about what happened to his uncle, Julius Caesar, that makes sense that he would actually have his own secret guard or royal guard here. Now, it doesn't mean he had 9,000 people guarding him the entire time. That would make going to the bathroom pretty awkward. But instead, it was their job. They were the best of the best. They were the special forces, the secret service, whatever you will call it. Their job is to guard the emperor. Now, fun fact in U.S. history, we didn't have secret service for a very long time period. Even upwards past Abraham Lincoln, believe it or not, he did not have a technical secret service. He had one guy who was supposedly guarding him on the night that he was killed, and that one guy was in a bar when Lincoln was assassinated. Oops, that guy kind of failed his job. Now, the Secret Service was actually around, but not protecting the president. Secret Service at that time period were basically under the Treasury Department, and so their job was pretty much counterfeiting and not so much making sure the president doesn't get assassinated. So someone kind of goofed on that part. So anyways, at this time period, as well as having the Praetorian Guard, they controlled most of Northern Europe, Spain, Gaul, which is France, and Austria. Now, not Australia, but instead Austria. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger was involved. That was a terrible impersonation, but I did my best. So here's what he thought. He thought, as well as other emperors, they had this idea that they cared for the people. And they said that well-fed people cause less problems. Well-fed people cause less problems. Now, be careful with the word fed. We're not talking about just, I'm giving them a whole bunch of food to eat. Instead, it's feeding them. So what are other ways in which people can be fed? And I don't mean like forks and spoons. That's not what I'm talking about either. Fed with food, fed with knowledge, fed with economics, fed with jobs, fed with entertainment, those types of things. So you're feeding all of these needs for the people. And I think it's true. Well-fed people cause less problems. No offense there to these three guys. But he looks like he's a pretty happy baby. And, well, Fat Albert, well, he's pretty happy. Kool-Aid Man, he busts through walls, so he's pretty happy. And yes, that's from Family Guy, but whatever. So anyways, that's the idea, is you feed people, mind, body, and soul, and then they're going to cause less problems for you. I think that's still true today. Anybody disagree? Nope, crickets? Okay, good, we'll move on. They also improved buildings and structures, and arts flourished. So you are taking care of your infrastructure, and you're fixing roads, your buildings, and your structures, and taking care of things that people need. Arts flourished, so creativity was abound throughout the kingdom. And again, all things are good, and you're not busy fighting a whole bunch of people, then you can afford to do different things with your money and your time. They made tax collectors part of the Roman government to stop dishonesty. That doesn't mean that tax collecting isn't honest anymore. But at the time period, it was independent of the government, so there was not a lot of checks and balances or watchdog groups who would take care of that. So in this case, that's what he did. So the government kind of takes that entity on, and they're supposed to, supposed to take care of the dishonesty and how people trust their tax collectors more. Yeah, right. It also allowed for laws for all people in the province, not just citizens. So again, it's a way for them to improve society and the lives of people in Rome. And this is one of the reasons why it does so well. We talked about that actually early on with things that Rome was pretty successful because it cared for its people. So he ruled, this all these things under Augustus, Octavian. So he ruled for 40 years. 40 years. And he died in AD 14, which is through the time of Christ. If you actually look in the Bible, you can find Augustus's name in there. It should be in there, as well as several other emperors and Roman leaders, because it kind of crossed paths with Christianity at the time period. And to rule for 40 years is quite a bit. 40 years anytime, whether it's past, present, whatever, that means he either did a really good job and people liked him, or the Praetorian Guard did a really good job of protecting him. So it doesn't mean, though, that every emperor is good. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the other changes that some of these guys had made. One guy was Tiberius, and he served for, anybody? 100 years. So it tells me he did a pretty good job, too. You see Tiberius, like Tiber River, not tiger, different thing. He regulated businesses from fraud, regulated, and he was a military leader. To regulate businesses from fraud. Fraud means that somebody is cheating the system somehow. So he made sure that businesses were doing what they're supposed to be doing, taking care of the customers, and not cheating anybody else so as to not get in trouble for things, and so that the citizens could believe in their businesses and their country as well. There's a little video here. I'll have to click on see what that. I think it's horrible histories that may not work anymore. The next guy was a guy named Caligula. Now there are a couple infamous guys on this list. A guy named Caligula and a guy named Nero. A couple of them are pretty good. A couple of them not so good. I mean, like every country, again, you have good ones and you have bad ones. Hopefully, weed the bad ones out sooner rather than later, so they don't do too much damage. So here's Caligula. Now he did do some good things though, and you look at this and you'd be like, oh, that's not too bad. In this case, Caligula abolished sales tax. Sounds like it wouldn't be too bad. And increased the power of the courts. Well, why might sales tax abolishment be a bad thing? Think about it. Well, think about what your sales tax goes to. If it's something that keeps your government afloat, if it's something that takes care of streets, businesses, things like that, necessary services, you say, well, great, the tax is gone, but then will these services be gone as well? And if sales tax go away, generally another tax comes in some form or fashion anyways. So here's the negative for Caligula. You tell me if the positive outweighs the negative on this. He was believed to have been mentally ill, had people murdered, and named his horse as his personal consul. Sounds legit to me. Now, some will argue that his mental illness caused him to have his personal consul, and other historians will say, no, it was more of a slap in the face to Senate and everybody else, that he had his pet around. He was just doing it tongue-in-cheek or sarcastically. Whatever it was, clearly he was not a good person. And the belief between him and Nero is that their mental illness was actually because of lead poisoning. If you know anything about lead poisoning, I'm not like eating graphite off of your pencil, but like material back then, like your dishes were made of lead in your cups. So a lot of the time that material would get into your blood system, and that causes mental illness. And in short, that makes you crazy. Brain basically just disintegrates. You lose your capacity of thinking. So nobody's really sure what happened there, but not in good form, and definitely murdering people, not good. And he was killed by his own Praetorian Guard. And you're like, now wait a second. They're supposed to protect the emperor. Well, they were really acting on behalf of Rome to do their own thing and make sure that this guy didn't rule any longer. So it kind of tells you it's bad when his own secret service guys assassinate him. So anyways, the next guy is Claudius. Claudius. There's an old, I think it was BBC did it, miniseries on Claudius, which talks about his rule. Sorry, my eyes are itching. And so Claudius, like my background there, built harbors and aqueducts and conquered most of Britain. Now, harbors, obviously, this is where ships are going to come in and we have trade, transportation. Aqueducts, not quack, quack. That'd be a different kind of duck on water. But instead of aqueducts, like duct work, it transports something from one place to the next. In this case, it is, as you can see from the background, water. So we'll actually talk about that in the next unit. But aqueducts, a lot of them are still around today, as you can tell from this picture, because it is a modern picture. It conquers most of Britain. Whoops. Now that's important because it stretches all the way up north, and that gets interaction between the British and the Romans. So believe it or not, they stretched out that far. And our last guy that we'll talk about, it looks like some of you guys, when you're laying on the couch doing your Zoom meetings, yeah. I wish I was doing something else. I wish I could watch Scooby-Doo and other things. Yeah, me too, I know. So anyways, this guy's named Nero. Where did he go? His name's not on there. I don't see it. Did I take it off? Beats me. All right, well, his name is Nero. Now, Nero would be your last guy. He's not a good one himself, but he had some quality things for him on his behalf. He assisted cities in disaster regions. He gave slaves the rights to file complaints. Now that's big because when we talk about slavery in the United States, they certainly do not give slaves the rights to file complaints, and not at all, because they were seen as property and not human beings. Assisting cities in disaster regions is very similar to what we have in FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, I think it's called. FEMA, which we have when we have natural disasters like the hurricanes that are going and going and going, or earthquakes or anything of the such, or the forest fires out west. FEMA does that. So that's actually kind of an early version of what that would be. So again, that sounds great. He's doing some positive things, which we still take on today, but he also did some things that I hope we don't take on today, which is like killing his wife, his mother, and his two wives. Yikes. And he ended up committing suicide. So, again, no one's really sure what happened to good old Nero. Rocking the bowl cut here. You can see from his eyes, he doesn't have a whole lot of life in those. So, the first thing, good. Second thing, not so good. So, Rome, needless to say, had some good leadership and had some bad leadership. But even the bad leadership did some decent things that we're talking about because, well, we kind of do those things in modern times. The first thing, though, not the second thing. Yeah, don't do that stuff. But anyways, there's a legend about Nero and a picture of the recently passed away, God bless you, Charlie Daniels, who wrote the famous song, Devil Went Down to Georgia. Legend is it that Nero played his fiddle as a great fire burned Rome. Now, some people agree with this, some people disagree with it. It kind of lends itself into the story of Nero being a little bit crazy and not taking care of Rome. But yeah, so again, legends not necessarily the truth, don't always know the truth, but this tells us that we have some sketchy leadership, some good things, some bad things, and we'll see about some other people come along to try and keep Rome afloat and become the power that it needs to be, or continue with the power that needs to be. Fun fact, did you know that a fiddle and a violin are the same instrument? You're like, no way, Mr. Sam. I'm like, yes. Same instrument is simply the style in which you play them. There you go. So if you see a violinist, tell them do a good job playing the fiddle, and they'll be like, no, playing violin. So anyways, there you go. There's your note sets. Study your vocabulary. We'll do a little bit of a review tomorrow. And yeah, go over your notes too. So you made it through Rome 1. There you go. All right. Have a good day.